In 1992 there was a company that had a simple goal: supply the market with a cheaper alternative to the Nintendo Game Boy. Their slogan: the affordable portable video game with giant screen. It was sold almost all over the world, but chances are you've never even heard about it. Let's start with the handheld that kicked it all off. In 1989, Nintendo launched a new handheld that would take the gaming market by storm. That handheld was the Game Boy. The Game Boy had to compete with the Atari Lynx and the Sega Game Gear, both of which came out in the same year and were capable of doing color graphics and better resolutions.
Can anyone handle the power of color?
Atari Lynx, the portable video arcade.
Whoa. Color.
Hey, there's an easier way to get color. Get a Game Gear.
But because of the Game Boy's great game lineup and unbeatable battery life, it came out a winner, selling over 1 million units within the first few weeks of launch. With the Game Boy continuing to do well throughout the 90s, other companies wanted in on its success. Consoles inspired by the Game Boy would pop up left and right. One of the companies wanting a piece of the pie was the China-based company Watara. Their idea was to introduce a low-cost alternative to the Game Boy, and in 1992 they launched their handheld. Meet the Supervision, a low-cost alternative to Nintendo's Powerhouse. Watara released 3 versions of the Supervision, all released under different brands and model names. This first model closely resembles the Game Boy with the same form factor and the placement of the buttons, on-off switch, volume wheel and audio jack. Side by side with the Game Boy, you can see what they were going for. A bigger, beefier Game Boy. This model is the same in terms of technical specifications as the previous model, with the addition of some features. Firstly, it adds a tiltable screen. While the tiltable screen looks useful, it's really just a silly gimmick and really adds nothing to the device in terms of usability. Some models even had kickstand legs. Honestly, who would play a game like this? This is also the only model with a link port, although no link cables to connect 2 devices was ever released, nor any games that utilize multiplayer. Go figure. The final model is known as the Magnum, released by the company with the same name. It's a slimmer model than the previous 2 models and is unique in 2 ways. First off, it's the only model incompatible with the TV link, more on that later. And second, it's the only model that can play Journey to the West, which is the only RPG ever released for the system. Of the 3, the Magnum is the most hard to find and pretty expensive to acquire these days, with some people asking, well, yeah, that. There were only a handful of peripherals released for the system that I know of, if we don't count the Supervision branded power supply, which was just a generic Chinese power supply. There is a carrying pouch with the Supervision logo printed on it, and there was also a slightly bigger carrying bag with the slogan printed on it. But the most substantial add-on, however, was the TV link. This massive contraption would let you hook up your Supervision to your television, displaying the games in 4 colors instead of 4 shades of grey, much like the Superboy for the SNES. Back to the company responsible for this handheld. To keep costs down, Watara did not do their own marketing and distribution for the Supervision. Instead, They relied on third parties around the world to do that themselves. The handheld was therefore sold under various different brand names and model numbers in a lot of different parts of the world. For example, the well-known UK brand Quickshot, famous for their joysticks, distributed the Quickshot Supervision Model QS800 in the UK. For us in the Netherlands, we were supplied by the German company Hartung with their Hartung Supervision Model SV100. And during a recent holiday to Denmark, I picked up a local Supervision distributed by the company Vini Spiel. It seems that the first version of the Supervision was also sold by Watara in a different color scheme under the name Travelmate. It's all very confusing. The Supervision did have some things going for it. It was cheaper, was larger, and had a bigger screen compared to its Japanese counterpart. The introduction price of the Supervision was an affordable $49, and that included a pair of earbuds and the game Crystball. When Nintendo launched the Game Boy in 1989, they sold it for $89. This included earbuds and the game Tetris. Nintendo didn't drop the price until 1992. In that year, which is also the year the Supervision was released, they dropped the price to $79. So what about that bigger screen? Both the Game Boy and the Supervision had a 2-bit screen capable of displaying 4 shades of grey, or olive in the case of the Game Boy. The Supervision screen is almost an inch larger than that of the Game Boy, and it also has more pixels, so it wins from the Game Boy on this front, right? Well, no. The 2.6-inch Game Boy screen with its 160 by 144 pixels gives the screen an 82.79 pixels per inch resolution. While the bigger 3.4-inch Supervision screen with its 160 by 160 pixels gives the screen a mere 66.55 pixels per inch resolution. So while the Supervision can display more pixels than the Game Boy is capable of displaying a much more detailed image. Also, the screen quality of the Supervision is horrible. The refresh rate is so low that it makes the screen suffer from immense ghosting and screen tearing. In slow puzzle games this isn't as noticeable, but as soon as things speed up, it becomes almost unplayable. The biggest offense of the Supervision, and probably the reason it never took off, were the games. For starters, the presentation of these games was done very poorly. Every game label looks like it was hand-drawn by a toddler. Most games came in these horrible plastic blister packages. Some games did come boxed, however, but the game art again was underwhelming and unappealing. That wouldn't be all that bad if the games themselves were enjoyable, but they weren't. Now, this is of course my opinion, but for me every game on the system is mediocre at best and dreadful at worst. Nothing worth spending more than a few minutes on. They're all weak remakes of known titles or existing Chinese games with zero replay value. So what about that high quality stereo sound? Every game does have music and most have sound effects, but the music in every game is so repetitive that it will eventually make you want to turn that volume knob down entirely. So where does the Supervision stand today? There is a select group of fans, myself included, that collect Supervision related items. New stuff is also still being developed for it, like multicards, games, and there's even talk of a screen replacement mod. Someone even modded the earlier mentioned RPG Journey to the West so that it can be played on all versions of the Supervision. In conclusion, the Chinese effort to copy the Goliath of handheld gaming of the early 90s and introducing the market with a cheaper alternative failed. With the inferior hardware and forgettable games, the Supervision itself was also soon forgotten. For now, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time on the Retro Game Couch.